The difference in our lives begins where we don't understand. He didn't rebel. He had learned to live with sadness as if it were an old acquaintance. In his thoughts, he always repeated the same phrase, low, almost inaudible. He only lived what he deserved to live. The beggar lived his days as if serving a silent sentence. He woke up when the cold allowed, sat in the same spot on the street, and waited. He didn't expect change, only the passing of time. In his head, an old, heavy idea repeated itself endlessly. He only lived what he deserved. In the midst of the bustling city, the beggar woke before sunrise, not by choice but because his body no longer knew how to sleep for long periods. The hard ground had taught him that. He sat up slowly, adjusted his piece of cardboard, and took a deep breath, as if accepting another day without arguing with fate. Life had been hard, and he no longer argued with it. He didn't ask the past for explanations or make plans for the future. During the day, he chose a spot on the street where the movement was constant. He didn't expect miracles. He extended his hand naturally, looking more at the ground than at the faces. With each person who passed came the automatic gesture and the familiar murmur. A coin. That's what I deserve. Some looked away. Others dropped a coin without even stopping. When that happened, he nodded in thanks, not with joy, but with acceptance. If nothing came, he would simply close his empty fingers and think that silence was also part of life's account. He believed that every suffering was a consequence of something he had done or failed to do. He no longer remembered exactly what, but that no longer mattered. The past had become a shapeless weight, and questioning it would only make the day longer. What he really expected was the end of the afternoon. When the sky began to change color, he felt a discreet relief. The day had been fulfilled, the routine respected. He counted the few coins, not to know how much he had, but to confirm that he had received enough to continue existing. Before lying down again on the cold ground, he murmured once more, as if sealing a deal with himself. It was fair. Neither more nor less than I deserve. His world fit into that piece of sidewalk, in his outstretched hand and downcast gaze. With each person who passed came the automatic, almost tired gesture and the murmur that seemed part of his breath. Use this every morning, he said. And ask yourself a question. The beggar frowned, confused. What question? The man stood up, already walking away, and answered without looking back. Ask yourself, what can I do today to be a little better than yesterday? A coin, that's all I get. Some dropped change, others pretended not to see him. When nothing came, he accepted it anyway. For him, everything was fair. If he received little, it was because he deserved little. If he received nothing, it was because that's how it should be. It's the life I deserve until, one day, someone stopped. It wasn't a brusque gesture or a look of pity. The stranger simply approached calmly, sat down beside him, as if that ground also belonged to him. The beggar found the silence strange, but said nothing. After a few seconds, the man spoke simply, almost as if asking for the time, "Why do you think you need to live like this?" The question struck the beggar like an old annoyance. He felt something rise in his chest, a dry irritation kept for years. He turned his face away and replied harshly, "Because I have nothing, I never have." The stranger didn't argue. He didn't offer money. He didn't offer food. He didn't offer pity. He simply put his hand in his pocket and took out a small mirror, made of simple wood, worn by time. He carefully handed it to the beggar. Then he literally turned his back and left. The bear, mejor in hand. And that night, when he went to bed, he didn't murmur anything. The silence, this time, weighed more than all the certainties he had carried his whole life. The beggar stood there with the mirror in his hands after the stranger left. He received no coin, no food, no comfort. For the first time in a long time, he didn't just look at appearances. He realized something else. He had stopped seeing himself from the inside. He no longer saw who he was, only who was left. The question returned to his memory, clear as a whisper. He received something worse, a question. He felt offended. Who was that man to insinuate that he could be different? Irritation came along with confusion. And, beneath it all, an uncomfortable curiosity that he couldn't silence. The mirror lay beside him on the cold floor. He didn't break it, but he didn't use it either. He slept badly, as if that simple piece of wood weighed too much for someone who believed he was worthless. The next morning, still annoyed, he held the mirror. He looked at himself. The reflection brought no surprise. A tired face, sunken eyes, a shapeless beard. But something different happened. What can I do today to be a little better than yesterday? He almost laughed. He had no food. He had no home. He didn't even have a comb. The old thought tried to return. This is what you deserve. But something was different. For the first time, he didn't accept the easy answer. He looked around. He rummaged through the ground near the wall and found an old comb with missing teeth. It wasn't new. It wasn't beautiful, but it existed. He sat down, ran his hand through his tangled hair, and began to comb it carefully, as if the gesture were too important to be done haphazardly. As he settled in, he felt something stir inside. It wasn't joy. It was dignity, small, fragile, but real. When he saw himself in the mirror again, the world hadn't changed, but the way he looked at himself had. That day, he raised his head to ask. He looked people in the eye. His voice came out firmer, less resigned. He didn't ask for merit. He asked for necessity. At night, instead of murmuring condemnation, he repeated the question. What can I do today to be better than yesterday? And he started doing it every day. One day, he decided to clean his own space. Another day, he helped a man carry boxes in exchange for bread. Then, he started arriving early at the market, offering help even before begging. Some people began to recognize him. A smile here, a short conversation there. For the first time in years, someone called him by name which he himself had almost forgotten. Over time, occasional work came. Then, a simple place to sleep. Friends came not out of pity, but out of companionship. Stories came, shy laughs, and the strange feeling of reliving his own life. Not as someone who erases the past, but as someone who overcomes it despite it. The mirror was still there, worn, simple, but now it was a commitment, not to judge himself, but to take responsibility. He understood something he had never allowed himself to understand before. He wasn't guilty for everything he had lived through, but he was responsible for the next step. He never forgot where he came from, nor the question. Every morning, he looks in the mirror and repeats, "What can I do today to be better than yesterday?" The years passed without fanfare, like everything that is true. The former beggar no longer occupied the cold sidewalk, nor waited for the day to end out of exhaustion. Now, he woke up early because he had somewhere to go. He had work simple, honest, earned through daily effort. He had a small but clean house, with a window through which the sun entered uninvited. He had friends, the kind who know the whole story and still choose to stay. Nothing came suddenly. Each achievement was an answer to the same question repeated every morning in front of the mirror, which he still kept, now hanging on the wall. What can I do today to be better than yesterday? One ordinary late afternoon, returning from work, he saw a man standing on the sidewalk. The face seemed familiar, but only when he approached did he realize it. It was the traveler. The same calm gaze, the same silent presence, as if time had no hurry near him. He never forgot who he was, not out of shame, but out of respect for his own journey. He knew that everything he had was not a prize, but a consequence. A consequence of having stopped condemning himself and started taking responsibility. For a moment, the former beggar felt his heart race. He approached slowly, with his humility intact, and spoke. "Do you remember me?" The traveler smiled slightly. "I never stopped remembering." The man held the wooden mirror, which he now carried in his backpack as a symbol, not as a crutch. "That day, I was lost, offended, empty. You gave me nothing. And that's what changed everything." The traveler nodded. "I didn't give you a path," he replied calmly. "I only reminded you that you could choose to walk." The former beggar took a deep breath. He looked around. The street, the people, his own life rebuilt with effort and dignity. "Every day I ask myself the question," he said. "Even now?" The traveler placed his hand on his shoulder and spoke, before continuing his journey. "Then you understood. The mirror was never about what you were, but about what you decide to be." And he left, as the first time, without promises, without long goodbyes. The man stood there for a few seconds, holding the mirror, feeling gratitude not for the difficult past, but for the courage that was born from it. Then he continued on his way, with firm steps, knowing that the good life he now lived was not an accident. If it made sense to you, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and continue with me on this journey. There is still much content that can transform the way you see life. I also want to hear from you. It was a choice renewed every day. Because those who learn to look at themselves truthfully never again accept living less than they deserve. If this message touched you, share it so it can reach even further. Every simple gesture of support generates gratitude and returns in the form of blessings. The story of this beggar isn't about poverty, luck, or destiny. It's about awareness, about the power of truly seeing oneself and taking responsibility for small improvements, about not waiting for the world to become kinder, fairer, or more favorable, and about being the protagonist of one's own inspiration, because, in the end, your life is shaped not by where you are, but by where your mind is. When you believe you are trapped, you sink. When you change your way of thinking, you open doors you didn't even know existed. Don't wait for the world to change for you. Change your mind first, and the world will inevitably follow. Leave in the comments how these words touched your heart and how your search for peace and balance has been. We will remain firm in our moments of learning and reflection because, in truth, we are just beginning.